Upon receiving the divorce certificate, I immediately stopped all expenses for the support of my ex-wife's parents. When my ex-wife returned home, she found her parents in tears. She suddenly jumped up from her seat and pointed her finger at me. "Chen Mo, are you completely crazy? These are my parents," I answered her calmly. "What do they have to do with me?" At that very moment, her illusory world collapsed. "My name is Chen Mo. I'm 32 years old, an IT engineer, and have a rather gentle personality. I just ended a 5-year marriage to Lin Wang." The moment my feet crossed the threshold of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I didn't turn around and immediately took out my phone. I knew this bank account very well. I had transferred 20,000 yuan more than I should have because of the previous delay, but now I simply canceled Lin Guoqiang's monthly auto payment. As I entered the apartment, I saw that my face still bore the frozen expression of the recent paperwork, but inside, absolute calm reigned. Lin Wang looked at me and confusion flickered in her beautiful eyes. She froze in shock and blurted out, "What have you done?" I couldn't care less. I calmly walked over to the table and tossed the red divorce papers onto it. I carefully moved the document closer to her. With trembling hands, she took the divorce certificate and opened it. Inside, a photograph of us together and cold stamps were visible. Her body began to tremble violently and uncontrollably. "What did you do with my parents' money?" Her voice broke into a scream, and I stood there with a completely unperturbed expression on my face. "Are you crazy?" She completely lost it. Pointing her finger at me, she screamed, "These are my parents. You have to continue paying them monthly support." I finally raised my head and said just one short phrase, "Now they are nothing to me anymore." These words hit Lin Wang like a bucket of ice water. All her previous high-flown grievances stuck in her throat, and her mouth fell silently open. She herself was briefly speechless, but her father, Lin Guoqiang, standing behind her, instantly flew into a rage. He slapped the sofa in anger and jumped up. "You ungrateful bastard, Chen Mo. You're an ungrateful little wolf. We spent so many years on you, and now you've just broken off all our ties right after the divorce. Do you even have a conscience left?" Her mother, Wang Licken, immediately joined in the general crying. "My dear, what a heartless monster you married. We were simply blinded by the hope that we would finally live like normal people." This feigned family crying was the most pitiful sight. Lin Wang, driven to hysterics, shrieked and lunged at me like a madwoman. Her sharp nails were threatening, but I simply stepped to the side, easily dodging the attack, and grabbed her wrists tightly. My arms were like concrete. Lin Wang winced in pain, realizing she couldn't move a single thing because of my strength. I leaned right up to her ear, and he quietly spoke words that were meant only for her. "Don't test my patience, Lin Wang. We are strangers now." My voice sounded cold and heartless. Lin Wang's entire body instantly tensed. Her attempts to escape ceased. She turned her head and looked at me with a look full of horror. A complete stranger stood before her. The submissive husband who had tolerated her family's antics for years, toiling away without a single complaint, had simply vanished. All that remained in her eyes was the icy, devastated gaze of a man who had thrown off someone else's burden and was no longer afraid of anything. She tried to hiss something after me, throwing curses and demanding that I return everything to the way it was, but I didn't care. This ferocious monologue seemed to me now no louder than the squeak of a mosquito. I didn't deign to glance at her again and simply turned away. He swung open the front door and stepped through the threshold, leaving behind the screams of Lin Wang and her sobbing parents. I slammed the door, cutting off all the pent-up noise. Calling the elevator, I glanced at my reflection in the mirrored metal panel. My face revealed nothing but absolute calm and long-awaited release. Only I knew how my heart fluttered with anticipation of a new life. Well then, Lin Wang, Lin Guoqiang, Wang Licken. The real show is just beginning for you. Let's go. I remember how, in the first days after the wedding, I proudly brought Lin Wang into our own home, having given every penny of my savings for the down payment on the mortgage. Then I gently took her hand and said, "Wanwen, don't worry, from now on your parents will become my parents too. I will take care of them no worse." My God, how naive and foolish I was in those days. I thought I was marrying the angel who made me hot tea in the evenings while I worked overtime at work. I sincerely believed that providing for a family and caring for loved ones is the sacred duty of a real man. I had no idea that my sincere promise would become the foundation for a carefully planned family scam. Less than 6 months after our wedding, my father-in-law, Lin Guoqiang, initiated the first serious conversation. He invited me in for tea and told me he was planning to start a joint business with a trusted friend. My annual bonus had just arrived, and the account balance was exactly 150,000 yuan. I planned to use this money to furnish our future nursery. However, looking into my father-in-law's honest eyes, I listened to his sweet talk about how the investment would pay off in just a year or two with huge profits, and in the end I didn't doubt it for a second. I immediately transferred him the entire 150,000 yuan. When I shared this with Lin Wang, she happily praised my generosity, declaring that her father would be incredibly grateful. Of course, that's when the whole business vanished. Neither the money nor the promised profit, not even the slightest trace of this sum, was ever found. A little later, my mother-in-law Wang Liken allegedly fell ill. Complaints of chronic fatigue and heart problems poured in one after another, and she required hospitalization. As luck would have it, at work at the time, we were closing a crucial stage of a large-scale project. I was torn between crazy deadlines and the hospital, rushing there every evening right after my shift to close all financial matters. I bought the necessary medications, ran around for tests. I followed her around for 2 weeks without a single complaint. And what about Lin Wang? She popped in a couple of times with her usual basket of fruit. Her visits were like inspections by a high-ranking person. She stayed exactly 10 minutes, took staged photos for social media with captions like, "Mommy, get well soon." It was as if she was overwhelmed with grief. After which she quickly disappeared to her own affairs, and I had to pay another 50,000 yuan for the treatment. Lin Wang didn't even blink an eye when I once again emptied the card for her family, but the highlight of it all was how they thanked me for my concern. I always dreamed of establishing myself in this big city. Toward that goal, I worked tirelessly. I'd work shifts in the office during the day, pick up odd jobs at home in the evenings, and rush off to find extra work on the weekends. After working like this for 6 months and saving up some money, the first thing I did was undermine my own health. One fine day in the middle of the night, I was taken away by an ambulance. Lying on my hospital bed in a cold sweat, I dialed Lin Wang. She didn't answer right away, and her voice sounded extremely irritated. "You always seem to be so restless in the middle of the night," she snapped. I barely managed to blurt out that I was in the hospital due to severe bleeding. There was silence on the other end of the line for a second, and then she said, "Are you even serious? What hospital are you at? And most importantly, is the treatment incredibly expensive?" At that moment, my heart completely froze. She'd been cooling off about my condition for about 2 weeks, but as soon as she saw the hospital bill, she rushed to the clinic, and my health wasn't her first concern. Looking at her face distorted with panic over the money she had spent, I realized for the first time the full depth of the collapse of our marriage. Previously, I sincerely believed that Lin Wang loved me, and all her endless concessions to parental whims were just a manifestation of her soft-heartedness, to which I was accustomed to adapt. But one day, accidentally looking at her unlocked phone, I discovered with horror that my beloved wife. Regularly, month after month, I secretly transferred huge sums to my parents. And these secret transactions were many times greater than the 20,000 yuan I officially allocated them monthly. Where did this money come from? The answer was shocking. She had been methodically siphoning money from our joint accounts behind my back without telling me a word. In that moment, I sobered up once and for all. All these tales of filial duty, family hardships, and sacrifice turned out to be empty lies. In this family, my silence was perceived only as weakness. To them, I wasn't a person, but a convenient ATM and a tool for extracting resources. I was completely caught up in her family's cunningly devised web. Their true attitude towards me was evident from the very beginning. My status as a son-in-law was viewed solely as. Like a poisonous seed, this thought took root in my heart. I didn't throw a tantrum or make a scene. Instead, I silently began gathering ironclad evidence. I now had all the receipts for the transfers to Lin Guoqiang and Wang Liken. Each time, they came up with new excuses and pretexts to squeeze money out of me, and I recorded every step. I carefully photographed and duplicated the receipts every time Lin Wang came to me with yet another of her relatives' crazy demands. I saved bank statements, promissory notes, correspondence, took screenshots, and collected a complete package of documentation. All these files were stored on a specially purchased encrypted hard drive. Lin Wang didn't suspect this for a second, continuing to enjoy the fruits of my labor without a care in the world. She continued to indulge her parents' insatiable greed, never once asking where my money came from or the emotional strain it was costing me. She simply cynically squeezed the last bit of juice out of me while simultaneously looking for someone else on the side. The final straw that broke the back of this situation was a chance discovery in the parking lot. I saw her in someone else's car kissing some guy. I knew this man very well. He was a newcomer to our group, a classic rich kid with a good-looking personality. In that incriminating video, he was smirking smugly. Turning to her, he poured out, "Darling, don't worry so much. I'll soon abandon this miserable hen from my family and marry you." They used me as a temporary resource, and as soon as someone fatter appeared, they planned to get rid of me. In that second, all my past love, all this marriage and years of hard labor turned into an evil, disgusting joke. However, I didn't stage a public showdown in the parking lot. I simply silently copied the video for myself, and when I got home, I calmly proposed divorce. At first, she tried to feign surprise and stall for time, but seeing my iron calm and determination, she instantly deflated and agreed. She naively thought she'd gotten off easy once again. She sincerely believed that divorce was just a ticket to a new, beautiful life with a wealthy suitor. She had no idea that from the moment of her betrayal, she had signed her death warrant. The doors of true hell opened for her and her relatives. The divorce wasn't the end, but merely the official start of my revenge. I walked confidently toward a well-known business center in the heart of the city. On the top floor of this building was the office of a celebrity lawyer. Zhang Qiang's name was emblazoned on a glass plaque. The receptionist immediately recognized me and smiled warmly. "Mr. Chen, Attorney Zhang is already waiting for you in the office." I nodded and walked into a spacious office at the back of the floor. When I opened the door, Zhang Qiang was sitting by the panoramic window overlooking the metropolis. He sipped his freshly brewed coffee leisurely. Noticing me, he immediately put his cup down, rose from his chair, and gave me a tight, brotherly hug. "So, is everything ready?" He patted me lightly on the back. I didn't respond out loud, but at that moment there was complete understanding between us. Zhang Qiang was my former classmate, dorm roommate, and closest friend. After university, I went into IT. And thanks to his sharp mind and tough grip, he rose to partner status in an elite law firm specializing in complex commercial disputes and high-profile divorces. My plan for revenge required flawless execution from the very beginning. I pulled out an encrypted external drive and a large folder containing all the evidence I'd collected from my briefcase. I placed them on his massive desk. Over 5 years, the total amount of illegal transfers to the Lin family amounted to 3.78 million yuan, plus 1.2 million yuan in loans issued in my name. The remaining 2 million were backed up by detailed transcripts and conversational notes. Zhang Qiang adjusted his stylish gold-rimmed glasses, connected the drive to his laptop, and began skimming through the materials. With each new file, his expression became more and more eloquent, especially when he opened the video of Lin Wang and her new rich boyfriend. He took off his glasses and tiredly massaged the bridge of his nose. "Yeah, this family is capable of surprising anyone. Did this lady really think she could get away with everything? You've probably been through a lot over the years. Why did you keep quiet and put up with it all before?" he asked softly. Of course, I was hurt and upset, but there was no point in giving in to emotions now. "Excellent work." Zhang Qiang put his glasses back on, pointing at the monitor. "The evidence base is simply rock solid, especially for large financial transactions. We'll refund any amounts covered by promissory notes without any problem. As for any unsecured money, we can easily register it as unjust enrichment or large gifts, subject to recovery through legal action." "What's our next step?" I asked matter-of-factly. Zhang Qiang's fingers tapped rhythmically on the table, and a predatory, professional zeal gleamed in his eyes. "We're taking tough action. On your behalf, we're formally sending a pretrial complaint to Lin Guoqiang and Wang Liken. Demand the return of all illegally obtained funds, including interest, within 7 business days. Not a yuan less. I will compile a detailed register. The source and date of every transfer will be detailed down to the last penny, so they understand. We're not joking if they try to ignore the request." Zhang Qiang smiled contentedly, looking at me with the predatory expression of an experienced lawyer. If they refuse to pay voluntarily, we'll launch a public prosecution, and then they'll be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. When this irrefutable evidence lands on the judge's desk, they will face not only a huge payment, but also deafening shame in front of the entire courtroom. At the very moment we were discussing this, my phone suddenly vibrated. Lin Wang's name appeared on the screen. I glanced at Zhang Qiang, turned on speakerphone, and answered the call. As soon as the line connected, Lin Wang's hysterical, piercing cry like a gunshot rang out over the phone. "Chen Mo, I beg you have mercy. Don't kill my parents, they're elderly and sick. You cut off all their cash flow yourself. How are they supposed to survive now?" I heard her classic guilt-tripping and even chuckled slightly. "Your parents can't live without other people's money. It's none of my business anymore. Lin Wang, you're their beloved daughter, so you solve these problems yourself. You've already squeezed over 4 million out of me, and now you're demanding more." Lin Wang was silent for a long time on the other end of the line, processing what she just heard, until finally her voice broke through again. "Chen Mo, you're simply inhuman. How blind I was to marry you. May you burn in the fire, the heavens will surely punish you." I had absolutely no interest in listening to her hysterical curses, so I simply hung up. Zhang Qiang merely shook his head, taking the phone from me. "The client has completely lost her mind. Take her away, there's no saving her." He took the phone and disconnected the line. "Secretary Li, please come in," he called into the intercom. The door opened and a young, collected assistant entered the office. "Lawyer Zhang, I'm listening. Prepare a formal attorney's demand and send it to Lin Guoqiang and Wang Licken. In the document, clearly outline the repayment deadlines, a full list of amounts, and a list of evidence. Send the documents by express mail with a delivery confirmation so we have all the signatures." "It will be done," the girl nodded and left. After she left, silence reigned in the office once again. I silently gazed at the glass-enclosed skyscrapers outside the window, clearly imagining the expressions on the faces of these money grubbers when the official document landed in their hands. Faces distorted with anger and panic. Zhang Qiang approached my table and placed a glass of warm water next to me. "This is just the tip of the iceberg. Let them be nervous before the storm," he said. I took the glass, took a sip, and nodded calmly. "I know. I want them to fully understand the cost of their own manipulations." Zhang Qiang looked at me with a look that conveyed genuine respect. 3 days had passed since I sent the pretrial demands. As expected, the Lin family did not contact me directly, choosing a different tactic. They decided to alert all mutual acquaintances, relatives, and distant relatives, launching a campaign to defame my name. The first to go on the warpath was my former, loving Uncle Lin Jai, who loved to lecture me about family life and what a docile son-in-law I should be. This hypocrite himself had been cursing old people behind their backs, but as soon as things got tough, he immediately started screaming about my ingratitude, even though he himself regularly stole money from this couple of pensioners. What a hypocritical spectacle, but it gets worse. Wang Licken posted a staged photo in a family chat, supposedly lying flat on a bed. Attached to the photo was a pompous quote asking, "Why am I being punished like this? I raised a snake on my chest instead of a devoted son-in-law." They did everything they could to paint me as an absolute monster. Lin Jai began forwarding toxic articles about ungrateful upstarts from the lower classes who abandoned their families for their careers throughout all the chats. Naturally, this insinuation worked. The family chat exploded with hundreds of indignant messages. All the aunts, uncles, and other relatives of the Lin clan came running to shame me. "Chen Mo always seemed so quiet and proper. How can the earth support such people?" they wrote. "The true nature of people is only revealed in adversity. Poor Wanwen suffered so much at the hands of this callous egotist. He got divorced, so be it, but why let the old people go to hell? He's completely lost his conscience." Most of the relatives readily believed this nonsense, and only a few sane people tried to call them to reason, but their voices were drowned out by the general chorus. And they didn't stop there. The morning phone calls gave way to open terror. The next day, Lin Wang showed up right at my house, throwing a public tantrum with screams and sobs that filled the entire building. She pounded her fists on the door and screamed throughout the entire floor, instantly attracting the attention of her astonished neighbors. "Chen Mo, come out, you creature. You ruined my parents' lives and now you want to destroy me too. Come out, you damn coward, don't hide." She screamed so loudly that the masquerade image of a polite and prosperous woman was completely erased from her face, revealing the true essence of a scandalous marketplace slut. But I only waited. The timing was perfect. That same afternoon, on one of the city's most popular internet portals, a hot trend has taken off with a disturbing headline: IT specialist demands $3 million back after divorce. Who's the real victim here? The post, replete with details, described in detail the recent scene at my home caused by an enraged Lin Wang, and attached a video of her hysteria. In the footage, Lin Wang looked not like a hapless victim, but rather like an aggressive troublemaker. The contrast with her public image was striking. The author of the publication gently led readers to the essence of the conflict, demonstrating the absurdity of the situation, and then laid out his trump card: the very documents from the lawyer's request. The post was accompanied by a detailed extract from the same huge debt list that I gave to Zhang Qiang, with numbers and dates. Dozens of pages of transactions, the exact time, amounts, purpose of each payment, everything was laid out neatly without a single gap. It turned out that over the years of marriage, the man poured almost 4 million yuan into supporting someone else's family, from purchasing real estate and cars to daily expenses and supporting insolent relatives. The irony of fate was that the man himself sponsored these parasites, while his wife, behind his back, was having affairs with rich kids and planning to squeeze out the remaining property. Now, when he demanded the return of his rightful inheritance, the family began to cry out against him for his ingratitude. The public outcry was immediate and devastating. Netizens who initially opened the post to find trivial gossip about a divorce, after examining the evidence, abruptly changed their minds to the opposite. 4 million, that's not marriage, that's selling your husband into slavery. This family are real leeches and energy vampires. We should have run from them yesterday. I fully support the author. And the girl in the video is just an insane psychopath. I don't feel sorry for her one bit. Public opinion online took a complete 180-degree turn in just a few hours. Seeing this devastating post, Lin Wang completely lost her mind with fear and rage. Her phone rang immediately, but her voice no longer held a whining note. It was filled with pure menace and fury. "Chen Mo, did you leak all this on purpose? You dare to publicly disgrace my name. I will never forgive you for this." I calmly raised the phone to my ear, not making a sound. "I'm not slandering anyone, I'm just publishing the bare facts, Lin Wang. It's not my fault, but the result of your parents' insane greed and your own appetites. Save your vocal cords, think about where you'll get the money to pay off your debts. Oh, and I almost forgot. This forum post is just a warm-up for the real show," I said as a parting shot. Without waiting for her response, I ended the call, refreshed the city portal page, and was pleased to notice that the discussion thread was breaking all records for popularity, and new interesting details about her family were already starting to emerge in the comments. Soon, other distant relatives of the Lin family began to show their true colors, finally confirming the family's reputation as parasites and troublemakers who knew nothing but to rummage through other people's laundry. Lin Guoqiang, due to his lack of principles, lost the last vestiges of respect. The narcissistic and vain Wang Liqin is mired in debt, and her boorish brother Lin Jai, a pathetic loser, has already changed more than a dozen jobs in the last 3 months. All of them have been parasitizing at my expense for years, creating the image of poor but proud relatives. Meanwhile, their online activity was severely restricted by platform administrators due to complaints of bullying. I knew perfectly well that Lin Wang and her parents wouldn't be able to sit still for long. Their panic was growing every day as the situation developed. The real show was just gaining momentum, and the avalanche of public condemnation was putting more and more pressure on them. The Lin family was literally suffocating under this pressure. Those same 7 or 8 aunts and uncles who had recently been the loudest in their support in the chats were now diligently pretending not to know this family, panicking about tarnishing their own reputations. In the end, Lin Guoqiang and Wang Liqin broke down and decided to back down, contacting me through a distant relative we both respected. "Listen, we are one family after all, so why arrange such a public execution?" the elder began from afar. There was a distinct note of concern in his voice. "Your ex-parents-in-law have realized they were wrong. Could you please delete all your online posts? As for the money, let's sit down at the negotiating table and discuss everything in a more relaxed manner." I nipped this conversation in the bud. "Uncle Van, it's not a matter of stubbornness at all. Since we're talking about peace, I have 2 tough, non-negotiable conditions. First, they must publicly and openly apologize to all my relatives, fully admitting their lies and revealing the facts. Second, they must return all the money they stole from me in a single payment, according to a schedule. Otherwise, we will continue to operate strictly within the letter of the law. There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. I knew perfectly well they wouldn't be able to meet any of these conditions. For them to apologize openly would have meant publicly admitting their own baseness, and their inflated ego and false pride simply would not have allowed this. Forcing them to return the money voluntarily would have been tantamount to a death sentence for their wallets, and predictably, any attempts to reach an agreement behind the scenes were ultimately pointless. Lin Wang herself was furious at her parents' cowardly attempts to cover up the scandal. Apparently, realizing that her reputation was already in tatters, she decided that she had nothing left to lose and shed the last vestiges of decency. She took a step whose madness even took me a little by surprise, choosing the path of the dirtiest and most public revenge. Lin Wang went straight to the company's management and her colleagues, putting on a real show of hand-wringing and sobbing. She played the classic poor lamb card, claiming that it was her ex-husband who was stalking and harassing her, portraying himself as the unfortunate victim of abuse. She naively hoped to move those around her to pity and regain their sympathy, but she made a fatal mistake. She still thought she was dealing with the same submissive and silent me. She had no idea that her every move had been calculated several steps ahead. At that very moment, while she was pontificating to the employees in the corporate tea room, an anonymous email was sent from an encrypted external server to the corporate mailboxes of absolutely every company employee, from the CEO to the cleaning staff. The subject of the letter was intriguing: the true face and secret preferences of our esteemed Mrs. Lin Wang. The newsletter's content was extremely structured. The first part detailed how Lin Wang. She spent years bilking me for money during our marriage, proving it with screenshots of actual bank transfers and correspondence. The second part revealed the enormous sums her family had swindled me out of under the guise of investments and wedding debts. The third part proved the most devastating. It featured bank statements from tenants of her personal apartment, who, on her instructions, transferred rent directly to the accounts of her parents and brother. And the final chord was that very video. Attached to the letter was a file containing incriminating evidence, a moment of their passionate kissing with a top manager in the parking lot, as well as an audio recording in which Lin Wang openly calls me a waste of space and expendable material. The evidence was so overwhelming that it left no chance for acquittal. Witnesses later told me that the scene in the office was truly spectacular. Lin Wang was reading a letter on the corporate monitor, and her face quickly turned deathly pale. The colleagues around her first froze in shock and then began to whisper, looking at her with completely different eyes. All the previously hidden details of her double life came to light, especially when one of the employees turned on that very video with sound. The beautiful mask of a respectable employee has cracked completely and irrevocably. Realizing that her career and reputation had collapsed in an instant, she screamed, threw her work phone on the floor, and ran out of the office in tears. Having caught a taxi, she rushed straight to my company's business center, hoping to sort things out with me personally. But the security worked efficiently. They didn't even allow her to cross the threshold of the lobby, immediately blocking the passage. She was raging at the entrance, screaming my name at the top of her lungs across the street, while I sat in the silence of my office and calmly continued writing code. I received a frantic call from reception on my cell phone asking what to do with a furious customer. I responded with a single phrase: act strictly according to company protocol. If she doesn't calm down, call the police. At that moment, my personal phone rang. It was Lin Wang herself. A hurricane of curses and hysteria raged on the line. "Chen Mo, you damned monster. Why did you ruin my whole life?" I put the cup to my lips and quietly said into the speaker, "Lin Wang, look up to the sky. People propose, but the Supreme Court disposes. Everything you're reaping now is the natural result of your own hypocrisy." With these words, I hung up. And I blocked her number forever. I knew that from that moment on, Lin Wang's illusory world had finally turned to ashes. Her adored career, her status as a successful careerist, her false prosperity and ostentatious virtue. All of this was destroyed by my cold-blooded response to her meanness. My own life, on the contrary, returned to its usual but now calm rhythm. The anonymous email became the biggest corporate scandal of the year, and now every employee at her company knew the true value of the soft and responsive leader. The few colleagues who had previously been friends with her now shied away from her like she was a leper, fearing to tarnish their own reputations by being associated with such a person. There was no trace left of her former authority. Now they whispered behind her back, remembering all her intrigues and contemptuous attitude towards people. Serves him right. After all, anyone who builds their life on betrayal and cynical calculations will sooner or later get their due, plus interest. Such scandals and the hiring of patently incompetent people are a colossal blow to the reputation of any company that values its corporate culture. Just 3 days after the incident was disclosed, the HR director and her immediate department manager were fired. Soon, Lin Wang was summoned to the management's office. I didn't know the exact content of their conversation, but the outcome was predictable. She was officially removed from all investigations and cases. It was obvious to everyone that this was the end. The company decided not to stage a public outcry, allowing her to leave voluntarily, but Lin Wang fell into absolute panic. Having lost all semblance of camouflage and composure, she began using any means necessary to reach me. My primary number had long been blocked in her phone, so she started changing SIM cards. I also blacklisted her from all messaging apps. Then she created fake accounts to add him as a friend again and again. Dozens of calls daily, hundreds of frantic messages, from poisonous curses to pitiful howls. "Chenmo, please get in touch, let's talk face to face," she wrote. "I was wrong, it's all my fault, forgive me. You've caused me so much pain, isn't that enough? If you continue to ignore me, I'll make your life a nightmare and won't leave you alone even after I die." At the peak of her hysteria, she went so far as to make direct threats. "If you don't answer right now, I'll jump right down from here, I don't care anymore." Her parents, Lin Guoqiang and Wang Liqin. They were also in a state of profound shock. They sincerely believed that their daughter's high position was an armored wall and their main financial support in old age. Now, when this support was crumbling, before my eyes, they scurried around the apartment like disturbed ants on a hot frying pan. In desperation, they remembered my elderly parents who lived far away. Having obtained my old people's home number, they began calling them day and night, trying to force me to take back my demands by putting pressure on the older generation. "Matchmaker, influence Chen Mo immediately," the mother-in-law screeched into the phone. "The young couple simply had a squabble over domestic matters. Who hasn't?" Our Wanwen simply stumbled out of stupidity. "How can a man be so vindictive and cruel?" My father, a simple village teacher, a man of honor and principles, was at first simply taken aback by such impudence, but I had already prepared the family for this circus. I told them the whole truth about how the Lin family had been parasitizing on me all these years. My father listened to me right during the phone conversation. Lin Guoqiang cut him off with a stern rebuke. "Listen up, you shameless old bastard, and don't you dare disturb our home again. My son and your daughter have long been divorced and their affairs are no longer our concern. You raised this monster yourselves, so you'll have to deal with it. And if you call even one more time, we'll report you to the police for telephone terrorism," Mom added, finally cooling their ardor. Under attack from all fronts, Lin Wang's psyche was cracking at the seams, and at that moment I delivered the final and most crushing blow. I instructed Zhang Qiang to formally submit our comprehensive lawsuit to the court, which consisted of strict demands. First, to recover from Lin Guoqiang and Wang Liqin the entire amount of unpaid loans in the amount of 1.2 million yuan, along with interest from the first day of receiving the money. Secondly, we require Lin Wang to return all funds illegally withdrawn from our joint property accounts for the needs of her parents and brother, totaling 860,000 yuan. Thirdly, demand compensation for moral damages in the amount of 2.2 million yuan from each of the 3 defendants for intentional slander and harassment. Fourth, all legal costs and expenses for the seizure of property are to be borne solely by the defendants. Official copies and notices were delivered to Lin Wang personally. Finding herself in the middle of a legal battle with her parents, Lin Wang was at her wits' end. She was fired from her job, deprived of her last stable income. Her retired parents were left without even the basic necessities. Lin Wang tried selling her designer bags and expensive jewelry, but the floodgates had already burst. She tried calling her old friends and high society acquaintances with whom she used to have afternoon tea, but now they all either ignored her calls, or they openly showed their contempt, letting her fully experience the bitterness of betrayal. From time to time, I checked her social media profiles through mutual friends. It was filled with nothing but plaintive posts about the cruelty of the world and the deep pain of the night. But my heart remained cold. There wasn't a drop of pity in it. "Revenge is a dish best served cold, and you cooked it perfectly," Zhang Qiang once told me. The Lin family was completely devastated. Lin Guoqiang even considered fleeing with his wife to another province to escape the bailiffs. But their digital footprint was being monitored by the courts everywhere, and escaping the law was no longer possible. I knew that years of patience and humiliation would finally bear fruit. On the morning of the court hearing, the sky was covered with heavy clouds and the atmosphere in the courthouse was tense. I took the plaintiff's seat. The three of them sat across the aisle at the defendant's table. Lin Wang had applied a ton of concealer. Trying to appear confident and maintain the remnants of her former arrogance, her trembling fingers and darting gaze betrayed a deep-seated panic. Lin Guoqiang and Wang Liqin sat next to her, their faces grimacing with disdain. With their noses in the air, hoping to intimidate the judge, the hearing officially began, and Zhang Qiang, under my instruction, began calmly and methodically recounting the events of the past 5 years. How the Lin family used me as a free ATM, draining my money and ruining my life. Then the lawyer rose from his seat, moving with the grace of a predator. And he turned to the presiding judge. "Your Honor, we ask that electronic evidence on the large monitor be included in the case. We have before us the bank details of the defendants Lin Guoqiang and Wang Liqin. There are exactly 113 money transfers recorded here, among which there are 17 confirmed debt transactions, for a total of 1.2 million yuan. In addition, the case file includes screenshots of all WeChat conversations each time funds were received." Lin Guoqiang and his wife clearly assured the plaintiff that these were temporary loans that they would repay promptly. However, to date, not a single yuan has been repaid. The stark numbers on the screen glowed like a death sentence, clearly demonstrating the scale of their financial fraud. The faces of the defendants at the table instantly changed. Lin Guoqiang tried to defend himself, but it was the son-in-law who was voluntarily showing filial concern. These were gifts, not some kind of loans. Zhang Qiang merely narrowed his eyes, a cold smile playing on his lips. "Gifts, you say, Lin Guoqiang? According to our law, large gifts require a written, notarized deed." "Excuse me, does your family have such a document?" "No, so this is clearly a loan, subject to immediate repayment in full. Especially since we have promissory notes with your personal signature." Lin Guoqiang turned as pale as a sheet and his face contorted with horror. Without giving them time to recover, Zhang Qiang turned the blow on Lin Wang. "Your Honor, this is Lin Wang's bank statement. Throughout our marriage, she systematically transferred our family's joint savings into the personal accounts of her parents and her younger brother, Lin Jai. Doing this behind her husband's back and without his consent. The total amount of such illegal transfers amounted to more than 860,000 yuan. Such actions qualify as misappropriation and embezzlement of marital property." Lin Wang's body began to tremble violently and she immediately burst into tears, playing her victim's favorite record. "That's not true. I just wanted to help my poor family. Didn't I have the right to take care of my parents? Circumstances forced me to do it. I had no other choice." Her tears were intended to move those around her, but a courtroom is not a one-man show. It is run exclusively by dry facts and ironclad evidence. Zhang Qiang didn't even let her finish, nodding to the court clerk. "Please play audio recording number 1. The next second, a painfully familiar voice echoed through the courtroom. The soundtrack was broadcast through powerful speakers, and every word was clearly heard by everyone present. It was Lin Wang herself who spoke. "Oh, Mommy, don't worry so much about this money. It's all my husband's income. So what if he's just a stranger in our house? We can easily take everything we need from him. But there aren't any relatives there, so who needs that money? He's a spineless simpleton. I twist things around for him and he doesn't dare utter a word, and his entire money machine works exclusively for us." The recording lasted only a few seconds, but each sound hit the ear hard, like the blow of a sledgehammer. The phrase landed like a slap in the face to Lin Wang herself, driving a stake through the hopes of her entire family. A dull murmur of indignation rippled through the courtroom, which the judge silenced with a single swing of his gavel. The chairman's brows drew together. Lin Wang flushed with shame, her face burning with the realization of her inevitable failure. She sat there, pale as death, looking at me with glassy eyes filled with animal fear and absolute despair. Apparently, until that moment, she still hadn't believed that her secret hypocrisy would come to light. She remembered that evening when she'd bragged to her mother on the phone about her manipulations behind my back. How could he have recorded that? Flashed through her mind. Next to her sat a tearful Wang Licken, her face buried in her hands. It was all over. The judge rapped his gavel and announced a short recess before delivering his final verdict, scheduling the verdict for the day after tomorrow. I calmly rose from my seat and was about to leave with Zhang Qiang when suddenly Lin Wang bolted. Losing her mind, she lunged across the aisle toward me, trying to snatch the folder of documents from my hands. Her target was that very same secure hard drive containing all the evidence. "Give it to me, you damn monster," she screamed, but the bailiffs arrived and instantly restrained her, thwarting any attempt at an attack. Lin Wang's hysterical screams echoed down the corridor, but I didn't even turn around. I walked confidently out of the courthouse. It was a clear day outside, and the sun's rays warmed my face pleasantly. It seemed like the first time in years I truly felt warmth. I knew for sure that justice had triumphed and the law had put everything in its place. The Lin family will pay the ultimate price for their insatiable greed. The final court ruling exceeded even the wildest expectations. The court fully satisfied our demands to oblige Lin Guoqiang and Wang Licken to return the entire amount of the original debt in the amount of 1.2 million yuan within 10 days, along with accrued interest. Lin Wang was found guilty of illegally siphoning off 860,000 yuan of family assets, and the total compensation for moral damages awarded to me from the 3 defendants was a substantial sum. All legal costs were also borne by them. On the day the verdict was announced, Zhang Qiang invited me to a cozy restaurant, raised a glass of wine, and said, "For finally clearing your life of this toxic garbage." I smiled and clinked glasses with him. This high-profile case predictably created a stir in city circles. Local tabloids and business portals quickly picked up the story of how a successful IT specialist sued his abusive ex-wife and won millions. Although our real names and company names were carefully hidden in the articles, for all their friends and colleagues, the details of the case were so transparent that it was easy to guess the true culprits. The Lin family's shame became firmly entrenched in their social circle. As for Lin Wang's career, this scandal was the final blow for her company. The morning after the verdict was announced, given the severe reputational damage caused by her machinations, management officially fired her for cause. Having lost her job and stable income, she was left alone with a mountain of debt. She tried sending her resume to other companies, but due to her tarnished reputation and toxic fame, no serious firm wanted anything to do with her. Lin Guoqiang and Wang Licken collapsed with a hypertensive crisis immediately after the verdict was announced. They clung to the very apartment whose mortgage I'd been paying for years, considering it their last fortress. The 10-day deadline for voluntary compliance was expiring. Naturally, they simply had no way to repay the more than 2 million, so without the slightest hesitation, I filed a petition for enforcement. The bailiffs promptly seized their accounts and any remaining funds. The disputed apartment was put up for urgent auction at a reduced price, and the proceeds were just enough to pay off the bulk of my debt. They still owed the courts the remaining unpaid fines and interest. Friends said the day of their eviction was a nightmare. Bailiffs were at the door. The entire Lin family was hysterical on the floor. Wang Licken was sobbing and rolling around on the parquet floor. Lin Guoqiang was drooling and trying to throw punches at the bailiffs, and Lin Wang had huddled in a corner with a box in her hands, completely disembodied. Resisting the law was pointless. In the end, they were forced to vacate the other person's square footage and, in a rented ark, depart for the outskirts of the city. There was no trace left of their former ostentatious arrogance. I completely changed my environment. I bought a spacious house with a green lawn in a quiet area, getting rid of any things that reminded me of the past. I updated the interior, surrounded myself with new furniture, and threw myself into work. Thanks to my technical skills, I was promoted very quickly. After taking over as the company's CTO, my income increased exponentially. At the same time, I joined a gym and started running regularly in the mornings, improving my health. Whereas I used to be exhausted from chronic fatigue and stress, now my body and spirit have achieved perfect balance. Life has finally found meaning and harmony. Zhang Qiang helped settle the final legal details, ensuring that no one from the Lin clan would dare bother me again. Sometimes we'd meet at the bar for a drink, and he'd look at me with genuine joy. You truly were able to rise from the ashes. 6 months after those events, on a quiet weekend, I was sitting in a cozy coffee shop in the city center. Soft sunlight fell through the panoramic windows onto the coffee table. Suddenly, the door opened, and a man entered the room, his silhouette simultaneously painfully familiar and alien. He was wearing a cheap, wrinkled t-shirt, faded jeans, and worn-out sneakers. His hair hung limply, his face showed utter desolation, and his shoulders were slumped. Before me stood the shadow of that same Lin Wang who, just 6 months ago, had shone at corporate parties in expensive outfits. She seemed to have come in here simply to escape the incipient rain. Noticing a vacant table in the far corner, she looked up and accidentally caught my eye. For a second, her body froze like stone. Her dull eyes reflected a storm of complex emotions, burning hatred, resentment, remorse, but most of all, a visceral terror of the man she'd tried to destroy. I looked back at her calmly and detachedly, then looked away without a trace of emotion. And he continued tapping his fingers rhythmically on the keyboard of his laptop. At that moment, she was nothing more than a random stranger to me. She swayed towards me as if she was about to say something, her lips trembling in an attempt to force out the words, but she immediately stopped herself. Head down, she turned sharply, pushed open the glass door, and disappeared into the rainy gray of the street. My heart didn't skip a beat. I had previously thought that seeing her fall would bring me either schadenfreude or triumph, but in my soul there was an absolute, ringing calm. All the past pain, resentments, love, and hate were finally erased, dissolving into the past. She returned to her well-deserved solitude. And then I clearly understood the essence of my liberation. Real revenge did not consist in making her suffer forever. And in order to erase her from my life forever and gain absolute freedom, I took a cup of aromatic coffee from the table. He took a small sip, savoring the bitter taste. The rain outside had subsided, the clouds had dispersed, and a clear, sunlit sky was rising over the city. The bright sun was once again flooding the city streets, and echoes of the past drama reached me only occasionally through the rare reports from Zhang Qiang. Listening to this news was like leafing through the chronicles of other people's mistakes. It was said that Lin Guoqiang and Wang Liqin, having lost their homes and all their savings, were eking out a miserable existence on the outskirts of cheap markets. The ex-spouses squabbled daily over every penny, blaming each other for the family's collapse. Amid constant stress and depression, Lin Guoqiang's health deteriorated sharply. Very soon, his body finally failed. He was bedridden, and the medical bills and medications. It was the final blow to their impoverished budget. Wang Liqin tried to humiliate herself, going around to all her acquaintances and former friends in hopes of borrowing at least a little money, but the people they had deceived for years responded with only cold contempt. There was no help to be found. Lin Wang herself tried to find work at the night market as a loader or vendor, but her tarnished reputation meant she was never welcomed. They never found the money for their father's expensive treatment, and soon Lin Guoqiang died right in the hospital corridor from a heart attack, without even having the means for a proper funeral. Wang Liqin completely broke down mentally after her husband's death. Although she remained alive, her mind was clouded, turning into an empty shadow of the once powerful and arrogant woman. Everything collapsed to its very foundations, and when that finale finally arrived, I felt nothing but a deep, ringing peace. One day, a letter arrived at my studio's work address. The handwriting seemed vaguely familiar, but I didn't immediately recognize who it was from. Opening the envelope, I saw a short message written in Lin Wang's hand. After a brief hesitation, I began to read. The text was laconic. Just 1 page of written words. To my surprise, the letter contained no angry curses, no hysterics, no attempts to justify itself, only an extremely calm tone. She described her current life. After the death of her father, she rents a tiny room on the outskirts together with her mother, who has lost her mind, and gets a job. A simple dishwasher in a cheap eatery, toiling 12 hours a day for mere pennies. He and his mother try not to think about those times anymore. The letter contained these lines: "This is the first time in my life when I earn every crust of bread through honest labor. It's incredibly hard, but for the first time in a long time, I feel alive and real." And then came words of sincere repentance addressed to me: "Forgive me for everything. Back then, I was blinded by greed and false glitz, causing you irreparable pain. I don't dare ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. It was you, with your fortitude, who opened my eyes to the rottenness and selfishness of my family, showing me what a blind and ignorant fool I was. The price was monstrous, but thank you for it. You woke me up from this terrible nightmare. My life is full of difficulties now, my muscles ache, but bringing my mother an honest income every day gives me the strength to carry on. I hope everything works out well for you. You deserve it. For a long time after reading, I sat in silence, staring at one point. My heart felt strangely light. No anger, no triumph, just a pure understanding that everyone had gotten what they deserved. I didn't reply to this letter. She didn't need any response anyway. She wasn't writing it to pity me, but to close her own lingering ties. I carefully folded the piece of paper and put it at the very bottom of the desk drawer. Now this document has ceased to be a symbol of hatred. It has become merely an epilogue to a painful but necessary lesson in growing up. My story with Lin Wang has finally reached its final, logical conclusion. Then my life went on as usual, becoming even more measured and happy. After leaving behind burnout at my old job, I used my savings and accumulated experience to open my own studio developing and designing smart home systems, where cool technology harmoniously blended with comfort. Soon, at one of the major business forums, I met an amazing girl, smart, independent, talented, and incredibly supportive. We found ourselves with a lot of common interests, similar views on the future, and a passion for travel. We often explore new cities. We spend evenings chatting in cozy restaurants or watching movies on the couch at home. With her, for the first time, I felt truly at home without fear or inner tension. I was no longer held hostage by toxic scripts from the past. I had healed and learned to truly love and receive love. Occasionally, old articles about those legal scandals would appear online, but I would just skim them indifferently. All those labels and complexes that once blighted my existence were forever a thing of the past. I was sincerely grateful to fate for this difficult experience. After all, it was precisely this fall to rock bottom that forced me to become stronger and build the life of my dreams. My parents often came to visit me in my new house, and looking at my calm, happy face, they were finally sincerely proud of their son. One sunny day, I dialed Zhang Qiang's number. "Hey man, are you free this weekend? Let's hang out at our favorite spot, I'll treat you." "Wow, what people, is someone pestering us with lawsuits again?" His cheerful voice came over the phone. I laughed in response. "No, I just want to have a drink with a nice person and say thank you." "Why all of a sudden?" "For helping me navigate the darkest path and emerge into the light." After saying goodbye to the lawyer, I rose from the desk in the studio and walked over to the panoramic window. The street was bustling with activity, people were hurrying past, and outside the window a beautiful, sun-drenched day shone. My new chapter was just beginning.